Happy Thursday afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Matuska Taxidermy Supply Company Thursday afternoon Facebook Live. I'm here with Brett Wingfield once again, and I'm Tom Matuska, and we'll see what we can find to enlighten you on. A lot of times we show people a lot of good ideas and share our ups and downs in the world of taxidermy, and it's always nice to have people text in and comment on what we're doing and share their experiences, because everybody has things that worked really, really well and things that didn't work really well and everything in between. Yeah. Got a beautiful day in the Iowa Great Lakes. It's getting cold. I think we're supposed to have frost tonight.
Cover your plants, veggies.
Cover your tomatoes.
Yeah.
Mine fell off. And if you were with us the last few weeks, I think like 7 of them maybe, we were working on a Bobcat project, and sometimes I feel bad dragging them out so long, but in order to do a quality mount, we can't rush through it, and we don't want to skip ahead so you miss half of the project and don't understand how we got from, B from A. Here's the Bobcat that we did behind us, and that's just how we left it. I think the next day we worked on his pelt a little bit, adjusted some face markings. If you notice, we put the plastic carding on the ears. We should have some really nice sharp ears. And the nice thing about that ear carding is we have it in a lot of different species. We've got elk, and we've got deer, and we've got bobcat, and we've got coyote, and we've got all kinds of different animals. And that will flatten down the edges of your ears, but it keeps your skin aligned on the edges very neatly.
Yes.
And when you take it off, it's going to look a little unnaturally flat, but if you back brush those ears, once you know that the skin is dried in the position that it needs to be dried in, fluffing them up makes all the difference in the world in a quality mount. So you don't need to purchase our fin carding or our ear carding. You can make them out of pop box cardboard or beer box cardboard,
they
anything,
don't have
and paper clip it. That works also, and then save them. Don't throw them away. Mark Goddering, I think, has a whole box made out of floor linoleum, just like we're on right here.
Oh, yeah.
And he saves them, and he's got a little Tupperware container, takes them off of his deer ears, and puts them in the container. And if anybody's seen Mark's deer, you know how good they are. And that's one of his processes, and probably how we got to the ear carding. It works very well. So the Bobcat, we spent, I suppose, a couple hours the following day, and we said that night as we were wrapping up on this, now is the time to begin your taxidermy project. Sewing is just routine. You got to sew it, you got to position it, you got to glue it. But once all of that's done, and a lot of taxidermists say, there, I mounted a Bobcat, and they shove them off to the side. That's when you need to start. The best mounted animals taxidermy projects begin once the last stitch is taken. I can't emphasize that enough. And I think we saw that a lot when we were teaching the taxidermy school. We had a lot of times the ladies seem to be primpers, and they could work for an hour to adjust 3 or 4 hairs, and we would a lot of times think it was a waste of time until you saw the finished project, and it was so well done. And it was because they don't get bored. They stick with it until the project's complete.
Yep. Moving the skin in order to influence the hair, I think, is one of the biggest parts of this, and we spend so little time with it when we get in a hurry into the production mode, and I think that's when a 6 becomes a 10.
Yep, exactly.
Is when you spend the time at the end.
We see that over and over and over. Saw that with turkeys forever, A lot of people mount a turkey in a day, and they say, there, I did it, mounted a turkey. Boy, that was a big job. A few days later is when that turkey really needs to be done.
Yep.
Now with this Bobcat, we still have some habitat work to do. We'll got a wire hanging down that his foot goes through. You'll notice the little rubber bungee cord. This is surgical tubing, but we use the surgical tubing in the shop for so many different things.
Just an extra hand.
It is helping hand. Yeah. We had a little oversized hole on that foot, and he wanted to lean back before he's fastened on permanently, and we wanted to keep him straight. So you just grab surgical tubing, wrapped it around, and it's not going to hurt anything. It's nice and soft going across the fur. Yeah. We use it for all kinds of things, especially when we do form alterations. You can stretch it and wrap it around. Yeah. We do a lot of molding here. We hold molds together. We hold molds up. The surgical tubing is, if you don't have any, you're going to want some hanging in your shop, because once you start using it, you'll use it for everything.
I see it hanging on that mounting stand, and there's another mounting stand over there.
With tubing hanging on it.
There's another mounting stand over there. We use it all the time.
We do.
It's just something that
it's handy. Very handy
rely
stuff.
on. Yep.
So then we'll do a little habitat work. Now we still have to, that would be a good animal to do a facial finish on also.
Sure.
We could think about in the future. His nose needs to be painted. You'll notice we use the real nose. A lot of people use an artificial nose. Doesn't matter which you use, a real nose or an artificial nose. I always say the real nose done well can't be beat. An artificial nose finished well is going to look great. Each one of them, if the job is botched, you're no better off with one than the other. So it doesn't matter to me if you use the real skin or if you use the artificial, plastic nose. They both have to be done well.
Spend the time.
And we'll finish the bottom of our feet on any of our animals. A lot of people don't mess with the feet when they're going down on the base, but we'll finish our stitches. We'll probably retexture it a little bit, set it back down on the rock. We'll get a little, probably epoxy around the eyes.
Yeah.
What else do you need to do? Check him over real good. Do a little fluff and clean him up. But that's the Bobcat that we bored you with for 7 years. I hope
Finally
for 7 days, 7 weeks. Hope you got some tips from that. But
that was
it's a big job.
That was a
big job.
one.
So today, what are we going to talk about?
We are going to change gears. Finally, 7
Finally,
was enough.
Yeah. They're all. It's a silent movie, but I can hear the clapping.
That's funny. Today we're going to talk about paint. And this is a pretty fun one. Fun for us because I think both of us enjoy spending time behind the airbrush, and we've got a big change to our paint theory for how long had you painted in one
Why are you
one
saying me?
method?
Because I got more years. Is why you're saying.
You'll
40,
trump mine.
40 years. I began taking paint out of a tube, and I would put it Grumbacher paint. I would squeeze it into a milk jug, and probably wasn't a milk jug. It was a gallon jug. I don't think they even had plastic back then. But I would squeeze it into a jug, and then I would put in mineral spirits. And there's certain colors that never dried out of that tube paint. It just doesn't dry. So you'd put in a little Japan dryer, and then you put the lid on, and you shake it for a long time, and then you would strain it, and that was your color for the year. And it would last a year because you had probably a quart of paint.
And so that was an oil-based paint.
Yes, and the greens and the yellows, they didn't want to dry. So all the fish in those days were only painted on the show side because you couldn't handle them. So we'd put them in a little cradle, paint the belly white. And we were smart on the belly whites and blacks because we used sign paint. Sign painters had to have signs dry quicker. So we'd paint the white on the belly and the black on the back, and that dried within a couple hours. The whites and the yellows and the greens took 3 or 4 days. So that's why you couldn't flip them over and do the other side very easy because you're going to be handling them. That's how I started painting fish. And then all of a sudden, I think it was probably Wildlife Artist Supply with Jim Hall.
Sure.
developed fish paint, and that's how Wildlife Artist Supply began.
Was with their paint
And
color.
Bob Williamson and Jim Hall, and it was, I think, an automotive paint that Jim Hall was a fish person and used it on fish and thinned it with lacquer thinner,
Yeah.
and that's where we went from there. And we
So-
used lacquers for 35 years.
Lacquers from Wildlife Artist Supply, and then eventually
Lifetone, yeah.
Lifetone.
Mhm.
And Lifetone we painted with. That brings us up to where I started. We started with Lifetone paint
Sure.
25 years ago,
Sure.
and breathed Lifetone lacquer for a good long time.
Lifetone's a great product. There's two major lacquer companies that I'm aware of, Lifetone and Polytranspar.
Yeah.
And very, very similar. We've kind of used mostly Lifetone.
Yeah.
Works good. The thing with lacquer paints is it's ready to spray right out of the bottle. And I think a lot of the automotive pigments are thicker and have to be reduced. The lacquer is much thin. They made it thinner so that you can put it right into an airbrush. Dries fast. The old oil paints took 3 to 4 days for some of them. Lacquer dried in 3 to 4 seconds. So that was something we were not even kind of used to. That's when we started painting the back of the fish, because you can paint the front, and while you're admiring what you did, you can touch it and flip it over.
Yeah, that's the hardest part to
That was magic.
still today to get used to. So you went from having to put in a dryer in oil paint to a retarder in lacquer
Oh yeah,
paint.
we even use
Slow it
retarder
down.
because with our airbrush, if you're spraying, especially intricate little lines and dots on noses and things like that, we experienced tip dry, we called it,
Yeah.
and the lacquer actually dried on the tip of the airbrush and would clog your airbrush.
Yep.
So then we graduated to adding retarder into our lacquer paint, and it would slow down the lacquer paint that we thought was so cool because it dried so fast. Now we're slowing it down.
Yeah.
So by slowing it down to 6 to 8 minutes or 10 minutes, you could paint intricate marks like smallmouth details, trout spots, that sort of thing.
Yep, yep. And then even further down that road, found that different lacquer thinners would affect the paint.
Yeah.
The slower burning lacquer thinner.
We answer a lot of questions every day on paint and I mean paint and tanning and all kinds of different questions, just because we've made every mistake that you people are going to make. There's nothing you can call us with that we probably haven't done or seen it done in here.
I can hear the phone ringing already.
With the lacquer paint, I mean, it dries so fast and is just kind of a good product. But like you said, it does have an odor to it.
Yeah, it does. It does. I remember working on a fish a long time ago and asking Corey for some advice. And he was the first one to suggest a slower burning lacquer thinner. That made a big difference in
Lost
how
my
that
train of
hurt.
thought. Hoping you bring me
No.
back.
But that was the first time I had heard that, and that made a big difference in the performance of the lacquer paint. And then we started using that regularly. It used to be a pretty special, hoarded over in the corner.
And we had somebody call, that's where I was going with that. So we had somebody call the other day, and the lacquer thinner that you get from the hardware store, we use to clean our airbrushes. We buy it by the 5-gallon bucket. We use to clean our airbrushes. We use to clean up our table, clean up spills, that sort of thing. But to thin the paint, like you said, a high-grade lacquer thinner, and they call it a reducer. If you go to around here, we have Arnold's Motor Supply. There's a few other ones. They call it a reducer, and it's going to be a lacquer reducer, and it'll make all the difference in the world with your lacquer painting.
Yep, you'll find that if you dig very far into it or talk to automotive painters, you'll find the reducer seems to be what we want for our paint. The other lacquer thinner that we find at Walmart, they often call a cleanup thinner. It seems more for parts and things like that.
And
so
we use that quite a bit.
It works fine, but you have to add
And
a little more
sometimes it'll even
retarder.
coagulate in your bottles
Yeah.
and things like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter if you use the airbrush little bottles like the Pache bottles.
Yep.
We've used those for years.
Oh.
And you put your paint in. We always like to put a little bit of reducer in it. Put your paint in, shake it up, and we would leave them in there. We'd take them off the airbrush, and we used ready caps. Is that what they're called? Little ready caps on the tip and a T-pin in the breather hole. And we would keep our airbrush paints in those for years, really, you know, over and over and over. But we've used lacquers for 30-some years.
Great deal of success. Lacquers were very good and still hard to kind of make the transition. But one day,
And
you got the wild hair. And I think you probably told the story, but it's worth telling again. How did we get to where we are?
well, first of all, I have attempted to switch to water-based acrylics. I have tried over and over and over. Polytranspar came out with water-based acrylics, I mean, years and years and years ago. And it's not cheap to switch. I mean, you might spend $300 on paints if you want to get a big, nice selection. And I did it. I went to a show, probably the World Show, and Polytranspar had a big booth there, Wasco did, and I got this one and this one and this one and this one. I came home, and I'm going to do it. No more breathing fumes, no more getting lacquer on your hands, you know, no more putting my liver through that and all that kind of stuff. And so I started with water paint, and I used it maybe about a day and put them away and thought, this isn't going to work. But then I tried it again and again and again until I finally let them dry up and never touched them again. Then came Lifetone. We were used to Lifetone lacquers. I'm going to use Lifetone water-based paint. So same thing. I buy a whole bunch of Lifetone water-based paint, tried the same thing, no luck at all. And I would try new equipment. I would try new airbrushes, you know, all kinds of things. It just didn't spray well for me. And plus the early water-based paints, I think, dried much slower. It took 10 minutes for the belly of a fish to dry. The best part of them was there was not the fumes in the air, you know, that you're breathing. But the drying was still an issue. What else? What was the other company?
After that, I remember Mike pushing wildlife colors.
Wildlife colors. And I bought all the wildlife colors. And I still have a big box of them somewhere. Tried those. And I really tried to give them a good shot. Couldn't do it. Woods and Waters was a good, that was one of the first better watercolors that we tried. And we use those on several different things. And so the story you wanted me to tell is Mandy was talking to Chad Elliott about his Sharpen Air, the little tool that you take your bent airbrush needle, you stick it in, and you can twist it, and it sharpens your needles. A great, great, great little addition to any taxidermy shop that uses an airbrush, because an airbrush needle's what, 20 to 30 bucks?
At least.
And if you bend it, it's useless. And trying to straighten it doesn't work unless you have this Sharpen Air. You can put them in and you can twist it, and with fixing one airbrush needle, you paid for the Sharpen Air. And so Mandy said Chad Elliott wants you to watch his video and to call him. And I put it off and put it off for a long time, and she's getting ready to put the Sharpen Air in the catalog. Got to call him. So I watched the video real quick, and he's retouching a photograph of a family portrait. And on this family portrait, I suppose it's about this big, the people's faces are about the size of a nickel. And he's just retouching, I assume, scratches and stuff on the picture. And so I called him, and he said, "Did you watch my video?" And I said, "Yeah, the one where you're retouching the photograph." And he was quiet for a little bit, and he said, "I don't retouch photographs." And I said, "Well, you had a picture of a portrait." He said, "That's an original. That's an original portrait from probably a snapshot or something like that." And I said, I was just so amazed. I said, "I got two questions for you. What kind of airbrush are you using, and what kind of paint?" That's all I needed to know, and I'm off and running. And he said, "I'm using a custom Micron from Iwata." And he said, "But there is only one paint for an airbrush artist." And he said, "That's Createx." And I had never heard of Createx. He said, "Createx is the finest airbrush acrylic paint you're ever going to spray. You got to talk to Craig Kennedy." So I get in touch with Craig Kennedy, who is the owner of Createx, and sent us some samples, and we've used Createx ever since.
Yep, yep. And it's been a bit of a learning curve, which I think that's, if we get to it, I think that's
what we're going to help you with
today. But we've been with Createx probably solely in the shop for a couple years
2
now,
years,
hasn't it? 2 full
we
years?
haven't run, I tell you people from time to time, different shows, I got a big exhaust fan back here which will suck the windows in. And with lacquer, we always had to use the exhaust fan, and we never use our exhaust fan.
So much so that we took the paint table down.
We did. Somebody commented a while back in an email. They said, "What kind of cabinetry do you have back there?" And it was our old paint table. We don't even have it anymore. Paint table's gone. We still have the exhaust fan in case we were ever going to skin a skunk or something like that, you know, happen to do that. But basically, we got a whole bunch of samples, and they kind of just pushed us adrift and said, "See how you like it." And it's very confusing. I got to say, I was confused for quite some time because we didn't have anybody. Craig Kennedy was helpful on the phone, but we felt kind of dumb calling him all the time with dumb questions. Because there's different reducers, there's different additives, everything has a purpose, and plus the different kind of paints. So we started out with illustration colors, and grab one of those illustration colors. They have a pointed nozzle like this, and they got every color in the world. You unscrew it, squeeze it into your airbrush bottle or a little cup, and when you're done, you can suck it out. But that's the illustration colors, and illustration colors are meant to be used straight out of the bottle. I think you're going to find that they're more expensive because you're using ready-to-go paint. You can't stretch it out and make more value for your money.
You can reduce it a little bit, but they say too much reducer starts to inhibit the...
And we were used to that with our lacquer paints. That was the first mistake I think I made, was I tried to thin it too much, and it ruins the paint. You don't want to thin it too much. The next paint that the next kind that they offer is Wicked colors. And Wicked colors are, I don't want to say foolproof, but that was the best painting experience I had, was with Wicked colors. And when we got our first Wicked colors, it comes out of here like, some of it's like pudding. It's very, very thick. And I poured it out and I went, what kind of junk is this? It's been sitting on their shelf too long, and he sent us these silly Wicked colors. Look at this, doesn't even pour out, but with paint like that, you can reduce it as much as you want, and this little container of Wicked colors will probably make you that much paint in the taxidermy world.
Yep, it will go a long ways. But in the mixing process, I think that was the next step. We knew we had to reduce it, but it takes time, which we weren't used to with lacquer paints. We found that if you mixed it in your airbrush cup, which we often would do, mix in the gravity feed cup, it didn't spray very well. It took time for that reaction to happen, and we have a mountain of paperwork on the hows and whys and instructions and so forth, but
You're the only one that reads
it
that. I always ask Brett because he says, oh, I read somewhere, and I don't tend to read. I tend to learn by not doing it right.
Well, we did a lot of not doing it right for a while. We mixed in cups. We found that, 10 or 15 minutes helped. It was to the reaction emulsify the reducer and the pigment, and that helped considerably. But even more than that, you took some and put them in bottles, and that's only supposed to work for a short time, but
these are still good. Why don't we show them a couple? Can I borrow your little clear cup?
Yeah.
Or maybe you have another one over there. These are, in talking to Craig Kennedy, he said they oftentimes mix in these. Yeah. And for the taxidermist, I think I found this isn't very practical for me. If I need something really quick, say I'm going to spray some blue vermiculation on a sunfish face or something like that, that color I use 2 times a year or less. I would do it in this. When it's done, down the drain it goes. But to mix belly white or bass green or something like that, I'd be doing it all the time, and we found this didn't fit the bill for us.
Yep. If you leave that open overnight, it starts to evaporate and you lose some of it, and it didn't seem to work very well.
To use that, first of all, any of these paints settle out quite a bit. Just like your Life Tone paint settle out. I just took this one out of the refrigerator, and it was all settled because we haven't used it for quite a while. So you need to shake this a lot, whether it's lacquer, whether it's Woods and Waters, whatever it happens to be. Make sure you shake it up real good, because you got your reducer in there from the factory, plus you got your pigment in there, plus all the other juices that they got in there. So you need to shake it. I think Createx colors mix well, but especially the Wickeds are a little on the thicker side.
Yep.
To help us do that, this is thanks to Tim Perkins. At the World Show, Tim Perkins said he's a lover of acrylic paints, and we were talking about shaking them, and he said, oh, you got to get one of those Vortex mixers from Amazon. He said, they're 25 bucks. No, Tim, they're not 25 bucks anymore. That's the first thing I'm going to tell you. But you can get Vortex mixers from Amazon. Doesn't matter if you're mixing Life Tone. You just push it down onto this and hold it. And that shakes these guys up.
There,
you can hear the little BB in here. But this makes short work of mixing. And I use my little Vortex mixer every day when I'm mixing paint. It just sits on my table like that.
Yep.
Well, even if I have bottles, these bottles are all mixed. This has been mixed for, I'll bet you, at least 6 to 8 months. And I have a little BB in the bottom. They sell those also on Amazon. I'm sure Mandy will have them.
Bet she's already looking.
You could put a marble in them, but that shakes these up really, really well. And they're not expensive. So I've got my red, and I'm going to put in, you don't want to waste it, but I'll probably put in maybe a half a teaspoon. We're going to say this is just a short little spray process. So I put in about this much. And now you have a big choice of reducers. And reducers, for practical purposes, is your thinner, and that's what we're going to thin our paint with. And we have a 4011, a 4012, a 4013, a 4020, and I'm sure there's probably more.
One in there too that we don't have. But
hand me a 4013, and it makes no difference to me. Or 4011, yep.
And I can't do 4011.
One of them is
I don't
made
think I
for
have that.
California because they can't have all the other ones.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
why you moved
yeah,
out of there, didn't you?
that's Darn right.
And 4020 has acetone in it, made for the automotive industry. There's different purposes. There's some for humidity, but for all practical purposes in the shop, we use a lot of 4011.
Yep, and it's been very good to us. The others have worked pretty well too.
I can put as much with the Wicked colors. We're going to confuse these poor people forever. I can put as much thinner in here as I want. Too much thinner, and I lose my coverage.
Yep, that's probably the biggest downfall, is you start to lose coverage.
See, just to show you how thick this stuff is, I'm not going to do it. I think you could tip it upside down, it doesn't pour out.
It's like a blizzard for Dairy
Do you have
Queen.
something for me to stir with?
I can get
Now I'm going to put in probably I put in, I'd say, at least 50%. Now Brett will bring me a little stir stick. And anytime you're thinning any of the Createx paints, Createx says,
I got you little stir sticks.
those are baby, those guys. Anytime you're mixing, Createx says, let them emulsify for 10 minutes before you spray. And many times I'll mix up a little color that I want to use, and I just can't wait. And I grab it, and I always have not as good of a spraying experience.
If you're gonna spray, if you're gonna paint in any process, whether it's a deer or a fish, it is really handy to mix all of your base colors ahead of time. Just put them all out
And just put
mix
them in
all at once.
If you're using the cups, just let them sit
Let
right
them
like
do
that.
their thing. Yeah, that makes a big difference. So it's nice, I'd say, to be organized. Be organized so that you know you have the majority of your base paint colors out, whether they're in a bottle or if you're going to have to pre-mix them based on the project. That's one step that really helps.
So we're already 3 minutes into the process, and we can use it. And you can use it now. It'll work. It'll work.
Can we do the little time-lapse thing? The cooking show time-lapse?
We could do that. So then, I didn't like these little things. They work good for small applications. We always had squirt bottles like this for all of our deer. When we did deer finishing, we'd have probably 7 bottles. We'd have a black, we'd have a Yak's nose gray, we'd have a brown, we'd have a flesh and a off-white. And we had these also, when we finished our deer, we would have these all pre-mixed. All you had to do is put them in your airbrush and go. Yeah. So I thought, I wonder if I can't do that with Createx. And some of the directions, some of the paints they recommend you can't store for a long period of time, not much of a shelf life. Like I said, this is 8 months old, I'll bet you. Yeah. And I have probably freshened it up and added more to it.
What would you say of this bottle is that?
25%?
Oh yeah,
not a fourth of that one to make this. Yeah. It goes a long, long ways. Yeah. Not so much the illustration colors.
Yeah. So mix in that bottle. I probably wouldn't mix your fresh bottle. I wouldn't add your reducer to this.
Right, correct.
But I would add a little bit of this and some reducer and set this aside.
So I'll just make I'm going to squirt a bunch of red in here. I'm going to have about a 1/4 inch in the bottom. And we'll just make a big bottle. And here again, 4011, doesn't matter to me, 4011, 4012, 4013, it all seems to work.
We're pretty climate controlled in the shop, so that might be why we're seeing similar results. I think some of them recommend for cold or for excessive humidity.
Yep.
But I think we're pretty consistent.
Now, the way I would use this is, I mean, this is one I've had around for 6, 8 months, 6, 8 months. I hope Craig Kennedy isn't watching this
No,
because
I know, we
he's
might
going to
get-
say you're
You
not
guys are
using my paint properly. I see what color it is. I grab it. I put it in my airbrush. I spray it. I suck out. We use a lot of gravity feed airbrushes here. By squeezing the bottle and sucking the paint out, you don't waste any.
Yep. Yep. That's a tremendous
No
help.
questions? No. We got them all confused thoroughly that they don't want
Thoroughly confused.
Do have Jay Cutroll. He says, I just finished 2 yellow eye rockfish reproductions and
Oh.
used some of the candy red for toning and was very impressed.
Nice, nice. Those are nice. Those are so there's a little learning curve to those, to the candies, but that's a really effective tool for that.
He just reminded me that the one thing about Createx that I think we found is it's, would you call it UV stable or color fast?
Yep.
We have fish in the showroom. I had one come in that I did for a customer maybe 7, 8 years ago, a walleye chasing a perch, and it's faded out so bad. It's just like it's bleached, and it wasn't in the sun. It wasn't anywhere that it shouldn't have been, and the coloration is gone. And you will find that they advertise it as such also. It's color fast. Your yellow stay yellow, your green stay yellow, or stay green, and red stay red. Very color fast. You're not going to get a lot of fading over time.
That's a big
That's
advantage
a
over.
huge thing.
Yep.
Go into our Walmart has some deer there with faces painted, and even the faces, the eye makeup, you know, the nose coloration, everything is all faded out, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's how we would do this. There are other additives too. I would suggest start out slowly with a reducer and paint. Don't get too confused by all of the different additives that you can get. But I would like to tell you about one is Balancing Clear. And that is, this turns your paint into a urethane.
Yep.
Incidentally, Createx paints are used to paint cars across the nation. I mean, it's a good automotive paint. It's an automotive paint that you can get all over your hands and go and rinse them off in water and it's gone. But the Balancing Clear turns your paint into a urethane, and you've used it on your musky lures, am I correct?
Yep. Yep. With a lot of success. I really like it. In adding the clear to it, you lose the ability to wipe it off. So if you're painting, and one of the advantages or disadvantages of the water-based paint is that you can paint away, find something you don't like, you can wipe it clear with water. Just a little water and a Q-tip, you can erase it. Once you add the Balancing Clear and it dries, you don't have that option anymore, and that's actually really nice when layering colors. It can work really well. It can work to your advantage for layering, and then it becomes a lot more sturdy once it's dry. The finished product is more sturdy. So I really liked adding the 40/30 to it.
And mainly, like any of the paint that we spray on a fish, gets clear coated with our gloss. No need for this whatsoever. Am I right?
No need for the Balancing Clear. Correct. Yeah, the Balancing Clear, I don't believe through the literature, and I haven't tried it as a clear by itself. I don't believe it's intended as a standalone clear. You can read back through some of that, but just it might be confusing that it's called a clear. It is an additive, not necessarily a top coat.
And there's other things. Another thing that we use a lot of, this is a gloss, UV clear gloss, and it looks like Elmer's glue, and you're gonna spray it on something, you're gonna freak out because it looks white. It doesn't go on white, but in here it looks very, very white.
Yeah.
You can actually take some of your pigment, add it to your gloss, and get a real transparent hue.
Yep.
You can put on your gloss, you can add liquid scales. You can add, you like to use
Yep.
Pearl Ex powders.
Absolutely, yeah.
Any of those are compatible, and
Yep.
it works really, really well.
And so the UVLS clear is more of a top coat gloss. It can be used as an additive, but it can also be used as a finish coat. It will tack up and dry and finish in the gloss.
And in our fish, we also paint with acrylic waters, and we gloss with a urethane automotive finish, our
Yep.
two-part automotive finish. I mean, each company is going to say, oh, don't do that, but we've had great success with that.
We have, and we've had really good success with pan pastels on top of our Createx, and workable fixative in layers. We've used the Krylon gloss in layers as we're building up. Seems to me that as long as each layer has an opportunity to dry in between, it works very well with different mediums. So haven't really had an issue. I did have an issue with an enamel aerosol. I did have a little reaction with that, but that was probably operator error.
Well, should we show them a little demonstration?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's still a whole bunch of stuff along the way too that holler at them as we.
We're going to save 7 minutes at the end to show you how easy it is to clean up, because it's a great cleaning experience.
Can you bzz that for me?
In that is that little, it's probably about a number buckshot size of some sort of
that's
double up
small.
buck. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. So this is just kind of I would say a burnt umber, raw umber?
I think it's raw.
Raw umber.
The raw umber is a delightful fish color.
Yeah.
Green, it's kind of a green-brown.
Yep, green-brown, probably one to stay away from for your deer. But this was mixed. How long ago would you say you mixed this?
Oh, gosh. That I brought from home, right?
Yeah.
6 months at least.
So 6 months old in the container, and there's nothing else added to that. This is just spraying exceptionally well. And it'll also give a nice wider spray. And then we can come back and get really up close and tight and do some very, very fine stuff too. The nice thing about some of the waters is that when you find that nice mix, you can go on and paint detail like this for a long time without encountering tip dry. And if you do, just a simple wipe across the needle out front there.
Now, I notice you're spraying with your needles exposed. Tell me about that little technique. Secret?
Careful.
The secret?
That came from...
Reading.
No, that came from a very embarrassing moment. I said the exact same thing in a seminar, sitting in the front row, to Mike Orthaber. Hey, where's your crown cap, your fancy little tip that goes on the end? Your needle's exposed. And he said to me, have you ever read the directions on your airbrush? No. Why would I do that? And the recommendation is actually to remove it. There's a few different cutaway caps like this one, or you can paint with it completely removed. The advantage is you don't have anything for the paint to build up on and create a barrier and block the paint flow. However, the disadvantage is that needle is exposed, and it is a very, very, very fine needle. Kick that hose and airbrush hits the floor, and we cry and we hope that we have a sharpener handy, because you're going to be fixing a bent needle. But that really is when I paint any kind of detail, the cap goes away, and then it rolls away on the floor, and somebody sweeps it up and never to be found again. But that's how I prefer to paint. So I really like to remove that.
If you drop your airbrush, it almost always falls on its nose.
Needle first. I think they're weighted that way by the company so that they fall that way, so they sell more needles. No, but that's why I do that. This little protective cap works really well too. But I've had really good success with this. Painting real fine details. It almost costs you money because you end up painting more detail than you really need to.
Can you
but
show
it's
us
so
on
fun. Yeah.
Like this muskie is ready for paint, and something you'll see the side. The side is just the finish on this fish is as nice as any fish we've ever done, and that sealer is.
Yeah, that is this one. This
Clear
is
sealer?
Yep, 6,000 transparent sealer, and this was just brushed on. We did not spray that on, we just brushed it on.
And we always used fungicidal sealer from Polytranspar, or base coat sealer, and all worked really well. This brushed on, this is like the nicest finish to paint on. I would get excited just to have this opportunity because it's so nice.
Yeah, that fish.
And this is all built up. This is epoxy work that we did to rebuild the shrunken areas, rebuild the, underneath of the jaw and things like that.
Yeah, I think we did that with Easy Carve. Just another for weight. That was kind of a nice.
Tell them about Easy Carve. We get a lot of products in, and sometimes it takes us a while to use them and gravitate into liking them. And Easy Carve was one of those for me. It sat on the shelf a long time. We sold Easy Carve, and I didn't really realize how good of a product it was until we started using it on fish heads.
Yeah. Yep. It's very, very lightweight, smooth, easy. It smooths out. The one difference between that and some of the other sculpting epoxies like Epoxy Sculpt or Fix-It Sculpt that we've used before is that it takes a little bit longer to set up. Easy Carve is, you probably have 4 hours before it's fairly firm, but it holds texture really nice. It's easy to work with. And accepts paint really well. So I'm just going to put, anytime we do any of our fish work, the first step we always told students, and first thing I like to do, is to blend any of the repaired areas. And so that's what I'm going to do with this. I'm just going to start blending because I think this brown is a close color. We like to blend to the existing area. So I'm going to try to get this close to that and tip him down a little bit so you can see that, Kate. And so we can apply these paints fairly heavily. Once they've been reduced, you do have to be careful that you don't put them on too heavy because they will puddle a little bit if you overspray. Put them on too heavily. But yeah, so this Createx right out of the bottle is doing a really good job of blending color there. I think I would come over this because we're starting with white. I think I would probably add maybe a dark green over top of it just to get our color match a little closer. But this does really well. So I would go around and blend this in. The bottom jaw we wouldn't do because we're going to do that one white. That's more of a white area, going to blend closer to the belly so we won't paint it brown. But yeah, we would just go back here and start blending all of our epoxies and finish all of our fix-its. Go along the seam. We do it's nice to do your fins, any splits in the fins now.
Now how dry is that?
I've actually put it on a little heavy in a few spots, but for the most part,
that's already ready to touch.
I can touch it dry. There's a few spots you can see here that as I was turning it, I got it a little bit heavy. It'll take a second for that to set up, but for the most part, I've been trying to put it on fairly thin and continue blending. So that's a nice color. That's gonna be a really good blending color. We would just come around and continue working those. There's some
No odor,
blend here.
no fumes.
No big haze. And that's one thing I think you explained a long time ago that I thought, oh, that makes sense. It's still an atomized paint, but how come there's no fumes?
I explained that?
Yeah.
Really? How did I do it?
No, I think it was, maybe it was Corey, maybe it was you. Water-based paint's just being heavier.
Oh, it goes down right down.
Yeah, they settle more than lacquer-based paints just hang in the air and
I thought
cycle
it was going to
through
be more
no.
chemistry involved in the
No,
explanation.
no. No, but I've gone through a cup full now. Just come back and
It works pretty good
add a little
after
more.
being mixed for so long,
oh
doesn't
my
it?
gosh, it's impressive. It really is for how well it does and how well it continues to do all through your paint day.
And when we got our samples and we started playing with it, there were 3 of us here, you and I and Jacob.
Little Jacob, yeah.
And we said Friday is good. Mandy said, are we going to carry this stuff or not? And we think it's good. The famous artists tell us it's good, but is it really good, you know?
Yeah.
And so we said Friday's going to be Createx day. We're not going to quit with it until it's either a yes or a no. Believe it or not, everything in our catalog, you know, we stand behind because we use it. You know, if it's something that we really, really like and we use it, we're going to tell you about it. And so we started spraying, and naturally, you know, I kind of respect Brett's expertise in the airbrush department. So we started at 8 o'clock in the morning, all 3 of us, each of us with a nice clean airbrush and all the different Createx products. And about 10 o'clock, I said to Brett, I said, what do you think? And he said, I don't hate it. That's good. That was a good, positive comment. And probably about noon, I said, you know, how are you doing? Are you doing any better with it? And he said, I think I can make it work. Well, that's a notch above, I don't hate it. By the end of the day, I think you thought this a lot of hope for it. And worth pursuing.
Yeah, and that's, at that point, I was happy with it. You were happy with it. Jacob was happy with it. I think we were all happy. But I can tell you, it's a even better experience today after we've learned gone through some of the trials and errors and figured some of the things out. It is a significant learning curve. But I'm much happier to sit here and paint without having to run the fan. And I paint with this at home in the open basement.
So do I.
Plenty. And I don't worry about stinking up the house or anything that way. It's been a really good experience. And I really do feel, I've only painted lures for a few years, and I can see fading in some of my first ones because they're out, they're exposed to light so much. I've gone strictly to Createx now, and I've had a whole season behind some of them, and they don't seem to have faded at all. So I'm pretty happy with that. If you get a chance, some of you guys that are watching now are probably fairly versed with social media. Follow Createx on
they've got some great
Instagram. Oh my gosh, there are some fantastic artists that are posting that Createx posts, and there's some super neat stuff. It's pretty inspiring. Sometimes you think, oh, I'm doing pretty good, and then you see what they're doing. It's like, oh wow, I've got a long ways to go.
See what somebody good is really doing.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. So I've pretty much painted out what I've got here.
If there's one secret, and it's not a secret, but if there's one secret to liking this product and keeping it spraying nice, it's cleaning your airbrush. Keeping your airbrush clean. Now, what my method, because I'm kind of lazy by nature, is I will spray some of my thinner. I'll just take a towel or paper towel or something like that, and I'll spray all the thinner out. I think I got it going the wrong way here. That's clean already. And now I'm going to hold my fingers over the needle and it'll back bubble here. And I don't know if you can see it, but that's forcing thinner out through here, and then I'm stopping it so the bubbles are going all the way back in.
Kate's got a good close-up of you if you can hold it right there. There it is. So that's forcing all of that gunk backward into the cup, which helps flush that out from both directions.
So I'll spray as much out as I can, get it all out. You can use a Q-tip and clean it out, but we have found in the past, Q-tips, you got to be careful, because whenever my airbrush doesn't work the best, I give it to Brett and say, can you fix this? And he always digs down in there and he finds curled up cotton.
Yeah, it doesn't take much. One little curly-Q of lint that gets stuck in there starts collecting paint dries on it, and then it becomes bigger. And this, for example, too, probably worth telling them, our needle size is 0.2 on this, and that's very small needle size. So any little obstruction in there is...
Now I can look down in here and I'm clean everywhere. I got a little bit around the rim. Okay, one more product. Can you hand me the Restorer?
Yep. That
we found to be very, very helpful. And my method of cleaning is I'll spray a reducer, like the 4011 is great. I'll spray it through until it sprays nice and clear. I don't have any buildup in my bowl. 4008 Restorer will dissolve lacquer, it'll dissolve oils, it'll dissolve everything, but it's still a water-based product.
Including your car. I think it will dissolve your
Dissolve
car.
the car?
It's powerful stuff, and it doesn't smell like a strong thinner. It has an odor, but it's not like a vapor type of an odor.
Now I do the same thing, and I'll even, if I set my airbrush aside for a few minutes, I might even let it sit in there, and it dissolves everything in your bowl. Stuff that you sprayed 2 weeks ago that you never got out, it will dissolve all of that stuff. If you're going to get spray Createx or any water, and the other companies might have something too, but the 4008 Restorer is a good product to have.
Yeah, and it really shines with dried on paint. You may not have to use it through just in between paint colors. Probably wouldn't recommend it between paint colors because it is really hard on the pigments. It will eat through anything. And
this would be the end of a day deal.
Yeah, yep. End of the day, or starting a new day with dried paint from the night before that you forgot to clean out. It works, it really does well for that too. But they do say don't leave this in your cup. Make sure that you clear through it, and then rinse thoroughly. Run water through it. I like to run like 40-13 and then water. They do say it can be hard on the seals of the brush if you...
And then I always like to check your needle. Now this needle, I've had it pretty clean, spraying stuff through, but I still have a little bit of buildup on it. I can feel right there. Give me some space.
Yeah, try and give you some slack.
And just wiping it through the thinner that I sprayed on the rag, I have a really nice clean needle. And like Brett said, I wouldn't make this the last thing I spray through because they say it can hurt your seals over time. So my final cleaning for the day would be just a little shot of this to rinse out the 4008. And that's it.
And that is, that's a great process through the Createx line. If it were Lifetone or any of the lacquers, clean it with lacquer. The best thing you can do is clean your airbrush at the end of the day instead of the beginning of the new. Best tip you can have out there.
So they're good to go for the next day.
Yep, absolutely. It's just makes it much, much easier.
So don't be afraid to try water-based acrylics. We think Createx is the way to go. It's a fabulous, fabulous product. You're just going to have to get a bottle and try it and see what you think.
Don't buy 10 bottles, buy a couple.
I always tell
Try
people, we go to the show, we were at the World Show, and there's people scooping up baskets of this stuff. Have you ever tried it before? No, don't do that. I've done it too many times. Get one, take it home and paint your fingernails with it for lack of, another use. But play with it and see what you think. And notice there's no hazardous breathing fumes. You can get it on your hands. It rinses off with water. It wipes right off. Another thing that's a reasonably good, I wouldn't reduce it with this. I wouldn't thin it, but alcohol. I mean, this at Ace Hardware is not very much money, and you can clean your airbrush with 99% alcohol and do a really nice job. If you're going to reduce the paint, make sure that you do use one of their reducers.
The actual reducers,
And we got a giveaway, I think. Our giveaway is going to be
4-ounce bottles.
I think so. And they're a set of like 6. They come in 5s or 6 or something like that.
6, I believe.
6. You're going to get 6 bottles. You can use them with your lacquer paints. You can use them with oils. You can use them with your brand new acrylics or anything that you want. And they're good to go.
And the winner goes to Roy Ingham.
And how did he get it?
Roy won by liking and sharing the last week's video. So make sure to like and share this video for our next giveaway.
Okay. Give Createx a shot. I think you'll like it. We think it's a great product.
Absolutely.
And call us if you have any problems.
I know.
Call Brett if you have any problems.